Manjeet is frozen. I think some internet issues, I'm guessing. Hello to everyone who's joining us. We'll just get started as we wait for people to come in. Okay, Manjeet, you're back. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Sorry, my internet. I'm good.
Excellent. So we'll get started and people can keep coming in. In any case, we'll be using the recording as through this month as we launch our new program. But right from the top of from the beginning, hi everyone, my name is ShreyasiSingh. I'm one of the two founders of Harappa and the company CEO. For I'm hoping that many of you know about Harappa, but for those who you're meeting for the first time, thank you so much and welcome. Very quickly, Harappa is a learning institution where we focus on what we call Thrive skills or cognitive, social, and behavioral skills. And we use these skills to create programs for managers, for women professionals, for CXOs. The conversation today is really about the school for CXOs and the way that they are hoping to reimagine leadership programs and learning programs for CXOs. And that's why we're here, recasting the CXO and the CXO 4.0. So thank you again for joining us. Of course, we have SaurabhMittal, who has been one of our much loved faculty across tens and hundreds maybe of cohorts that he has worked with us on, but more specifically now much more with the CXO programs that we've launched. And Manjeet is a very, very special guest for us. She leads HR and all things people at Pratham Foundation, obviously one of the most admired not-for-profits working in education. And she was a learner in our founding cohort of the Women's CXO program. So we'll hear from her about how much hopefully she's benefited from the program. I think she's having some struggle with her internet, so I'm hoping we'll get that back. But Saurabh, let me begin with you, because obviously given sort of your rich experience of obviously working in corporates and choosing to live a different life, but most importantly, in all the leadership work you do with professionals across companies in India, when Harappa says that in our school for CXOs, we're getting ready for, CXO 4.0 or leadership 4.0, what do you think it really means? What do you think the new, modern, current CXOs, however old or young they are, really need to be?
Thank you, Shreyasi. Thanks for having me on the webinar. It's wonderful to be here and getting an opportunity to address CXOs and people who work with CXOs. I think the world has drastically changed, and it's changing at a breakneck speed. I continue to maintain that half-life of knowledge is reducing. Given what technology is doing to us, to our work, to people, to society, it's incredible pace of change. And there was never enough that CXOs had catering to them for their learning and capacity building and growth. But everyone I work with now at a CXO level is out of their, they're out of their wits because they don't know how to deal with the world that is changing. So I feel something which is going to, build capacity for them and make them more cutting edge to be able to lead us to a brighter future. There was enough earlier to learn about leadership. Perhaps at some point in time, there was a lot of theory. There were a lot of, thought leadership that was coming in the space. But right now, everyone seems to not know what's around the corner, what's around the bend. So adaptability, learning orientation, having to deal with newer revenue models, newer business models, making sense of the ever-changing world, and trying to always pivot what you're doing is a skill that CXOs need to develop. And that is not a skill that is easy to acquire unless, someone makes a dedicated effort in building that particular skill. So I feel just navigating the changing times, making sense of, what's happening, what's around the corner, how do I build my own personal capacity to be able to then lead other people. Before leading team or leading an organization, a CXO needs to lead themselves. And how do you lead yourself when you are, not centered, when you haven't figured out what's going on, and how do you navigate, how do you build your personal vision, etc. So I think there's a lot that is at stake. And for me, someone who's focusing on CXOs, a school of leadership that just focuses on CXOs, launches a program for them, is an incredible intervention that should help us build future leaders, because earlier leaders came in a caste. Right now, there is no caste. The caste is broken, in my opinion, right? So if there is no caste, then how do you move forward? So I think that's how I think about what you have suggested.
Yeah, and just for everybody's understanding, I think our belief and point of view at Harappa for the School for CXOs is based on two inputs: one, data, and one sort of empathizing with people who are in this position. One, the data suggests that people are becoming CXOs sooner than ever before. So I think there is a primacy on youth, or a trying new ideas, or a reality of the working demographic that is our country and is going to continue to be, especially with young high-growth companies. So many more newly minted CXOs than ever before. But second, many more newly minted CXOs than ever before also means many unsuccessful first-time CXOs, right? So I think they're getting the opportunity faster, but because they're getting the opportunity faster, they're not prepared. And so failure rates are also very high. So that's, the positive leading to an effect. The second is, and I think this is coming from the empathy towards people in these positions, is, we equate it to mountaineering or mountain climbing. Right, that actually, mountaineers use a concept called the death zone, that, the weather becomes more brutal, the ascent becomes steeper, sharper, more dangerous, and the air becomes thinner in the last 10% of the climb, right? And it's in the last 10% of the climb that really separates sort of, those who can make it and those who don't. Many of us can get to a certain point. So I think our School for CXOs is based on those two insights, essentially: early ascendance to CXO roles, massive failure rates of first-time CXOs, as well as seasoned CXOs also, but certainly of first-time CXOs, and the empathy that really the last 20% of the journey is the toughest and where people need the most help. And with that, we have created, what we are calling, of course, we have the Women CXO program, and I'm going to come to Manjeet next, who was a learner from our founding cohort, the Women CXO program, a program we are very excited about, the iNSiGNiA CXO program that goes live on October 31st and, uses 6 eyes, as we call it, and we get into the details: a storytelling CXO program, and eventually a digital CXO program, right? Because I think we've heard so much from enterprises saying that. But Manjeet, react on what I said, and react as a learner, but also react as a head of HR of such a large organization. This point about people getting responsibility much faster, but also flaming out in the responsibilities because they're not prepared.
Thank you, Shreyashi. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this interesting and exciting webinar. Well, I completely agree with what you said and what Saurabh mentioned, that people are getting these opportunities to prove that they are leaders, to take charge as leaders. But the preparation going behind these young leaders is not as much in comparison to the the burden or the responsibilities of this leadership that is being put on their young shoulders. So I definitely feel that we need to prepare them young. We need to start early so that we are ahead of the game, rather than we struggle when the responsibility is put immediately on the person. So I feel that these courses should become a norm and not just remain an elite special courses which are accessible only to a certain or a few selected ones. Just not CXOs, but in any role that you are going to play in next few years, we need to start early in preparing those leaders. And as an HR leading an organization, 6,000 people, I feel, I completely, relate to what you are saying, that, there is so much need for people to grow. There is so much to do. Suddenly you are today you are my colleague, tomorrow I become your boss. How do I deal with those challenges? Plus the responsibilities that come with the job. So it's all put together, creates so much pressure, and hence we are seeing these hiccups or small number of failures that we are seeing. So I completely agree that, if we want the new generation to, to thrive, to do better, and to lead better, to lead us into a better world, we need to, prepare them, and coach them, help them with the skill sets that they need in future.
But no, I think Manjeet, you raised a really important point about lack of preparation. Like this, people then having massive failure rates as CXOs, right? Because the responsibility is so much. You're not given that much time. You're constantly under scrutiny and under watch, right? And there, of course, you fail out. I think that's a sort of a consistent theme that I would feel like that's true in our workplaces, right? I feel like we almost feel that there's a biological evolution that happens, like parenthood almost, when you become a manager, when you become a CXO.
Right.
When the reality is it's not. Like nobody in their right mind, if he wants to successfully complete even a half marathon, would go to it without preparation, right? Nobody in their right mind, if they were to take a competitive, test like the SAT or GRE, would do without preparation. What is it in our workplaces, certainly, right, that we believe that people can be accelerated to such, responsible positions without investing in their preparation and without understanding how rigorous and how structured and how thought through preparation has to be? Do you think it's our default optimism that we put people in positions, sink or swim, and the people who are truly flourish will just thrive? We don't need to prepare. Why don't we think about preparation enough?
I think there are a couple of reasons in my understanding, Shreyasi, why this is happening. One, businesses have proliferated. We used to have limited number of businesses, and there was a type of business earlier, and there was a lot of runway with a structured program. People were prepared to, get into senior positions where they could lead the organization. Suddenly, what I mean by proliferation is we have more startups, more businesses, variety of businesses. The economic activity, as it has gone through the roof, has given rise to many kind of businesses. Do we have enough people to lead all of those organizations? We actually don't. So that is one reason why this is happening. Second, I feel also people feel that if someone is good at sales, they might be good at a general management or a CXO role. A CXO role requires you to make decisions which are very well thought out, are based on data, based on intuition, and sometimes, learning experiences that you've gathered over the years. So if you're young sometimes and you are being put into a CXO position, then you must have been good at something. Obviously, you're a rock star to have been made a CXO, to have been given the helm of affairs. But the problem is that you haven't covered all your bases and you haven't had the opportunity to go inside to figure out what do I need to prepare for. A lot of reflection and introspection needed to happen earlier when CXOs were being groomed, and they had the time and the runway to do that. Now the time and runway is not there. You're launched immediately. And interestingly, I do not need to know information. Information is available at fingertips now. What I need to know is how a technique. I do need to know myself very well to be able to sense, to be able to align, to be able to not fight and not do it by brutal force, which was something which came naturally to leaders earlier because they had enough time to do all of that preparation. So I feel proliferation of businesses and someone being good at something, but then suddenly being launched into a much broader role is what's, coming in the way of, CXOs being successful. And yes, titles are also being used loosely sometimes nowadays. We call people CXOs, but their mandate is not quite a CXO mandate. So that's something that we should take with a pinch of salt and understand who truly is performing a CXO role, and just for the for the advancement, or sometimes rewarding people, CXO titles are being handed out. But nevertheless, if I'm a CXO and I may not have quite a CXO role to play, but then I should use that as an opportunity to come to Harappa School of Leadership, go through CXO programs, capacitize myself so that when I'm really put on the job of leading an organization, I hit the ball out of the park. I should be able to do that.
No, I think really, really good inputs. And I think for everyone to keep in mind, because we all know that there were leadership incubators, whether it was the Tata Administrative Services, whether they were, companies like Hindustan Unilever, but because they were very strategic and long-term in thinking about it. And sort of your point is right. There were very few companies like that, and they took people through the paces over decades with great intentionality. Right now, because we are a fast growing economy, and actually from a 3 trillion, hopefully we'll be at a 6 trillion, $10 trillion soon. The fact is that we are going to grow faster than we're able to grow leaders. And I think for all of us who joined on the program, I think it's a very sobering thought that do we actually have the CXO cadre to meet the opportunity that our economy is going to throw up? And clearly we don't, and which is a good news for the country, and also good news for people who are being put into these positions, right? Who didn't think even 3 years back that they would be CXOs, but they are CXOs now. And I think that's a good thing if we understand that they need even more preparation. There's an intensity of effort and preparation that they will need in the first 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, right? I think we sometimes do redemption or remedial help when we know that things have gone wrong. I think what our hope with the School for CXOs is that you need to at least begin 3, 6, 9 months before giving somebody the CXO title. But even if you can't afford that, for whatever reason, from a timing, or can't plan for that, given how the business performs, must in the first 3, first 6, first 9 months, because the harsh reality of the business world now is that most CXOs will not be given an opportunity after the first 12, 15, 18 months. Their first 18 months is when they need to make it or break it. Right, Manjeet? And would you agree with that it is we have to now focus on the post 6 months of the CXO becoming a CXO?
Absolutely. I mean, what I think the preparation would do is it will create a foundation for people to grow, for people to perform well, for people to feel confident enough that they can deal with the challenges. So, taking them through these courses would definitely help them create the foundation. But, when the real challenges are right in front of me, that is also a support or a hand holding that would be needed for these CXOs. And as Saurabh said that, it's going to grow. And you also mentioned that, the economy is growing, the businesses are growing, the new business challenges. We are dealing with a new generation entirely. So, that's another challenge, the workforce. What the workforce expected 10 years ago is not the expectations anymore. They want more in everything. So yes, we have to prepare our leaders and CXOs for this new phase that they are going to go through.
Yeah. No, so Manjeet, let me ask you now as a learner, right? The next response as a learner of our Women CXO program. I think the point you raised about, of course, you couldn't prepare them pre or post or immediately after. But I think the thing that you said that they need support as problems play out, which is really the concept of coaching, right? Or CXO coaching. That's obviously one of our main elements of inclusion in our program design, because we do feel that, as cohorts of peers, CXOs learn from each other. So peer learning is actually very, very well manifested in this level of programming. But I think we have a strong belief at Harappa that every CXO should have a coach who they can discuss life problems with as well as they're going through. That could be org structure, that could be their own personal limitation, right? Tell me, how did you find that useful as a learner of the 6-month Women CXO program? How were the cohort elements which introduce you to big concepts How did those help? And how did the life sort of, or the one-on-one coaching that you got through an executive coach, has that helped you over the last 6 months?
So if I say about the cohort, I think having peers who understand or who are almost going through the same challenges that you are going through helps you to vent out, to somebody to listen to, somebody to guide you, or even sometimes just giving an earful to someone helps you put your thoughts in a more clearer manner. So that cohort of the peers that I had, I think the in-person retreat was a wonderful example that we hadn't met each other, but within those 2 days we became such good friends, and I'm still in touch with at least 5-6 of them. So, and we do reach out to each other when we are in different cities, when we meet, when we are traveling for work, for personal reasons, we connect, we share. So I think that having that network is very useful, for each one of us, and it has personally helped me to get out of my comfort zone and make new friends, create that network of peers who are exactly going through the same same sort of learning growth or the challenges. And in terms of these master classes or the way the course was run, I think just listening to people who have gone through these challenges was very super useful. I was mentioning it to you earlier also in the chat that, when I was listening to them, I could relate that, okay, they also went through it. It's just not me who's facing these challenges. Am I on the right track? Sometimes I know what to do, but I just need a affirmation, or I just need a nod from someone that, okay, yes, what I'm doing is right. I might fail, I might succeed, but at least I'm on the right path. What I'm doing, what I'm thinking is not entirely incorrect. So having this network, having these exposure to listening to industry experts or people who have gone through this experience, young CXOs, was super insightful for me as a learner. And it added a lot of value, and it made sense as to why leadership courses are required. Because it's just not the hard skills that make you do well in what you're doing. It's the people skills. It's understanding perspectives. It's understanding the landscape which will create a total enjoyable learning experience for you. And we need to enjoy what we are doing, even if you are being a CXO or you are currently playing a CXO role. It cannot be taken as a burden. It has to be enjoyed, and it can only be enjoyed when you feel safe, when you feel okay, when you are happy doing things. So I think I was very happy undergoing this 6 months of leadership. And then I suddenly realized that, oh, it's the last session we are having, which means that, I'm going to lose out on, a lot of insights and information and help that I received during this 6 months. And my coach, Shweta, was wonderful. I was discussing, not all times I was discussing my work problems or my challenges, career, but the general dilemmas as a leader when you lead teams. I was going back to her, knocking on her door to say that this incident happened, this has shaken me, and few incidents actually happened during this 6 months, and she was helping me unlayer my thought processes. She was not giving me any direct answers, but she was helping me discover different perspectives. What do I feel? Why do I feel the way I feel? So that was very insightful to me, that coaching experience.
So lovely to hear. And we launch a program for alumni. Don't worry. Something
I'm
so
looking
you don't have
forward
to you don't have to miss us for too long. We've got you on this, right? So we can all chat. But Saurabh, tell me, I think Manjeet's inputs are so sharp, right? And they're so useful for us as we think about designing. You worked with so many CXOs and CXO teams, right? I think a point that she made about psychological safety, peer input, peer affirmation, right? Like all very, very big concepts. What is your the one thing that you can pinpoint that you feel CXOs really struggle with, that interventions like ours and what you do with us really helps them? What is that one fear or sentiment that is the toughest for them to deal with?
What a great question, Shreyasi. Thanks for asking. Got me thinking as to what would be that one thing if I have to pinpoint. My sense is it's obviously softer, as Manjeet acknowledged. It's not about harder skills. There are enough harder skills, and there are people who you can pad up with even if you don't have harder skills. It's the softer aspect, and within softer aspect, I think it's the EQ, the emotional quotient to be able to deal. Higher EQ, and as you rightly said, that it's the 10%, right? The dead zone. What is it that you're doing? I mean, you're not doing any of the functions. At the end of the day, you're just dealing with people. You're dealing with people, their expectations, their egos, you're aligning, whether you're partnering, whether you're selling, whether you're, delivering, whatever you're doing, you're talking about people. And people who at that level, when you're dealing with, everyone has very high stakes. So how do you navigate that world where you have not seen it earlier, you haven't met these people earlier, your ability to make sense of a complex situation, your ability to have difficult conversations, your ability to figure out what is it that I need to focus on? When someone goes and builds a startup, what do we tell that person? Don't focus on the idea. Don't focus on the solution. Don't focus on product and technology. Please focus on the problem. If you get the problem right, you will be successful, right? Same thing, a CXO doesn't know, where do I go and focus on? What should I address? How should I address it comes much later. So first of all, picking the battles that you need to pick, things that you need to focus on, and how would you know what you need to focus on? For that, again, there is enough outside. There's so much information, there's so much data, there's so much that is going around. One needs to go in. So CXOs really need to be able to go in, figure themselves out, figure out their values, figure out their natural gifts and talents, figure out, how is it that, I'm going to align everyone else. And it has to be, they have to bring themselves into the role that they're doing. If someone tells them, no, this is how the role has to be done, then, sorry, anyone else could have done that role, right? I mean, you're not a robot. You're going to come in and you have to deal with it. So I think that is one thing I would say, if I have to pinpoint, your ability to navigate difficult situations, challenging times, and having very high level of EQ for that is very important. And a lot of CXOs have very high IQs, but not necessarily high EQs because that has not been nurtured. We have never focused on it. So that is one thing I would say, Shreyasi, which is very important, at least from my perspective.